Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tribal Council podcast, where on this podcast, Survivor represents our life, and when it is gone, so are we. My name's Ethan Kroc, and I'm joined by my co-host, Connor Boudreau. Unfortunately, Jessica yet again cannot make it this time. Hopefully, she'll be here for the next episode, but how are you feeling at the moment, Connor?
I'm feeling pretty good. Very interesting episode. Interesting outcome. Definitely a lot to talk about, which will make this a very eventful episode to kind of discuss things in the podcast. But a weird twist circumstances that, again, I think falls under the list of, did the fans vote for this?
Well, we could talk about the first victim of the Blood Moon twist, Camilla Carthagesu. Arguably the least screwed over of the three. Well, I don't know. There's conversations we had for her and another player here, but she did blindside Jonathan at the last vote, and this was, at least to some extent, kind of just an unfortunate consequence for her. Mind you, the fact that she was put on a tribe where Jonathan did have so much power to begin with is obviously just unlucky. And you can argue from that sort of lens that she was screwed over, but outside of that, it's kind of just a bad draw for her in terms of the group that she was put into. So, I don't know. What do you think about Camilla's exit here, Connor?
I just don't think she was cut from the right cloth, as Chrissy puts it, which, it's just a weird situation where, again, as you mentioned, really bad rock draw. Consequences of past actions, arguably. I guess revenge for Charlie. But, there wasn't really, a particular flaw you could point out outside of that, Camilla really went wrong. And then otherwise, she was just shafted by the edit. At least she got to 2 confessionals per episode average, which is good for her. And it was really kind of weird to just, A, not have Camilla on jury, and B, just really not get much Camilla screen time, considering, I feel like there was a lot of new era players that people were like, I don't know if we need to see them back so soon, or just in general, whereas, Camilla definitely had a pretty significant party that were interested to see her back right away. And then, the concern of, but she's with Kyle again, but Kyle's gone right away. So we'll really get to see Camilla play her own game. And then it kind of falls short.
Yeah. Which is unfortunate. I would have liked to see more for Camilla, but unfortunately I think being a victim of this Blood Moon twist just didn't do her any favors for her edit prospects. But now we move on. We talk about Genevieve Mushaluk. Definitely, probably the most unfortunate tribe draw for her here, with being put on in a group with Aubrey, her arch nemesis all season, and then the 2 people who gave Aubrey an idol. Her only real safe haven was with Joe, and arguably she probably should have just targeted Joe over trying to work with him to make something happen here, because there was no way that they were splitting up that 3. Again, I think if she were to split up the 3, the biggest case that she could make would be Aubrey really trusts you guys. She's not going to play her idol, and I know how these Billie Eilish boomerang idols work. If we blindside Aubrey, that idol goes in your pocket. Probably, if she really, really, really did not want to just say, hey, look, I might have something, guys. Maybe you should target Joe to be safe. Probably actually targeting Aubrey would have made the most sense, but she doesn't even do that. She tries to target Devins, which, she doesn't know how close him and Christian are, to be fair, but that was just never going to work. And it does get her sent home here, unfortunately, with the shot in the dark miss, no less. What do you have to say about Genevieve, Connor?
A couple things, again, positive for Genevieve. She was well aware enough that she had better odds of 1 in 6 chance playing a shot in the dark than she did of actually working Christian and devoting her way. But again, her way could have easily been a better path. Albeit, I really don't think it mattered. I think the second we saw that rock draw, Genevieve was just gone. And that is, she could have won the immunity challenge. She could have drawn a different rock. That's about where Genevieve's game went wrong at this current tribal. Also, a really weird twist. Found 2 idols that she couldn't keep for herself. A lot of circumstances come into play to really drive home what went wrong for Genevieve. And I'll go so far as to say I think she's one of the most, if not the most, screwed over by circumstances juror in U.S. Survivor history. I don't think that's a blasphemous statement. I think it's definitely a conversation to be had for people to not make the jury because of all of the things that had to happen. 1 or 2 lucky things goes her way and she's on that jury every time, potentially goes late into the game. But again, the circumstances, you got to play the hand you're given. She wasn't able to keep those idols. She made a very bad choice trying to target out the specific person she did once she saw the rock draw. And again, she could have beat Christian in that immunity challenge potentially, right?
Here's what I'll say. I genuinely think that Genevieve was about as screwed over as any other player who just kind of drew a bad tribe at a tribe swap, quite frankly. Because at the end of the day, the whole Billie Eilish Boomerang Idol situation, you're not owed an idol just because you go out and find something. Unless you find an idol, there have been so many advantages hidden at camps that just aren't even idols, let alone Billie Eilish Boomerang idols. Or are idols that you can't use right away, right? Every single Beware advantage, there's been some sort of caveat to when you would be able to use them. Ryan Ulrich on HVHVH found a super idol that he had to give to somebody on another tribe. There are so many things that you could go out there and find. The fans could have voted for there to not be idols on this season, and I don't think anything changes for Genevieve in that world. So, because even with Aubrey's Billie Eilish Boomerang Idol, which you could argue, on paper, it's unlucky that her closest ally was sent a Billie Eilish Boomerang Idol. I don't really think it mattered because of the circumstances of the swap. Maybe had this blood moon twist not happened, it would have come into play. But Christian and Devins were always going to work with Aubrey regardless, and Genevieve was always just going to be in the minority here. So realistically, I don't know, the Billie Eilish Boomerang Idol thing, it's kind of fun to poke at it and be like, wow, how unlucky for Genevieve. But realistically, she went out looking for an advantage. She found an advantage, right? She found something that did have the potential to really help her in the game. And that's all you can really count on when you go out looking for advantages on Survivor. It's just not unprecedented at all. There's a long history of advantages that aren't idols, idols with conditions, idols that you are not allowed to keep for yourself, yada yada yada, legacy advantages, what have you. Again, realistically, at the end of the day, I do think Genevieve was definitely screwed over. I think she definitely got incredibly unlucky, but I just don't know that I can say that she was any more screwed over than some of the people who've drawn some of the worst tribe swaps in Survivor history, which is still fairly screwed over, to be fair. I guess the other thing I'll say is people pointed out the 2 Billie Eilish Boomerang idols, that made it even worse. Oh my god, she found 2 of them and couldn't use either of them. It's when she found that second Billie Eilish Boomerang idol, she was looking for a Billie Eilish Boomerang idol. She knew exactly what was out there at that point, and she still went out looking because, you know what, she wanted a Billie Eilish Boomerang idol. So, I just don't weigh it all that heavily as far as how screwed over she was, because it really is just a pretty normal part of the game. Not this specific twist, because this would be the first time that this very specific twist has been used, but similar twists, but very, very similar twists, like Ryan's idol that he had to send to somebody on another tribe, an idol that had zero chance of even coming back to him in any way, shape, or form. So arguably, just a worse version of the Billie Eilish Boomerang Idol. For the person who finds it, anyways. I don't know. All those things kind of combine to where, for me, I just don't think Genevieve is quite as screwed over as a lot of people are making it out to be.
That's fair enough. I will just say this. At the end of the day, Genevieve's second game will always be now a big what if. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that, it's going to be a real shame because it sounds like she doesn't want to play again. Sounds like that was her,
Whatever.
Second game.
Emily said that she was never going to play again. Right? I don't even know that Emily's the only person on this cast who had previously said that they were never going to play again. People change their minds about that sort of thing constantly. Coach, I'm pretty sure, has said that he was likely never going to play again. So...
Sure. Fair enough.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see Genevieve again down the road. I hope we see Genevieve again. I think she'd do pretty well on a third season, but who knows? But Emily in particular was adamant that she was never going to play Survivor again. And yet, here she is. Because the call of the island or whatever is just too seductive. What do you think about Colby? What do you think about Colby leaving here?
I mean, if we take a step out of the game for a second and just look at the post-game stuff, it sounds like he could have been medevaced pretty soon. He said even himself in an interview that Dr. Joe tried to pull him prior to Tribal, and he said, I think I'm about to get voted out. Let me at least attend Tribal and we'll see what happens. But ultimately, I think not even a bad rock draw for him. I think he has the least, oh my God, the rock draw killed me. I think really what I would say happened here is Cirie does what Cirie does best. She has a target. She convinces two people that Colby has to go. And I think it's the absolute biggest shame that this is the end of Colby Donaldson in Survivor with almost certainty. I mean, it's been 25 years since his first season. And it's unbelievable just to see how much he really could change his game his fourth and final time around. But ultimately, he hurt himself. He wasn't really in a super stellar position, I don't think, anyways, with his Honor Integrity Alliance. I feel like even though he was at the centerfold of it, that kind of also meant he was one of the first people in the firing line. And I don't know that it really was going to be a long road for Colby anyways, given all of the circumstances in play.
I mean,
it was cool to see him.
He had his Honor and Integrity Alliance. He also had significant connections with Rizzo, Stephanie, Genevieve. Again, the connection with Genevieve wasn't going to matter for obvious reasons, but still, who else? Really, those are the people, right? Aubrey, kind of, through Coach. And then when you look at the web of connections, I mean, he had a working connection with Rizzo that could have potentially evolved into a connection with Ozzy or Cirie or D or any other number of... Oh, D, he already had a pretty significant connection with, actually, I think. Or no, that would...
I mean, yeah, she was literally crying at the thought of voting him out at Tribal. It was pretty apparent that she didn't want to,
right,
but she was convinced into it being the best move to kind of hinder the Honor Integrity Alliance by, guess who? Cirie.
I got confused by the fact that Dee and Colby have never been on a tribe together, but I forgot how quickly Dee becomes attached to people, as we're learning on season 50, I feel like. So yeah, they actually did have quite the connection for the one day that they knew each other. But, and good for them.
I mean, technically it's a day and a half. They merged partway into day 12.
I don't know what the exact number of hours that they knew each other was, but it wasn't long. It wasn't long for Dee to be so torn up about voting him out, is all I'm going to say. Now for the players who are still in the game, and would it surprise you to hear that in last place, as far as who I think is going to win, I have Tiffany Nicole Irvin.
What? No way.
I mean, let's talk about the positives. She quadrupled her confessional count this episode. So, that's something. That's got to count for something, right?
Sure. But need I remind you what some of those confessionals were?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that she quadruples her confessional count in an episode where she gets blindsided is kind of crazy.
Not only that, but a third of her confessionals are just talking about the merge and the blood moon.
Hey, that's great.
If not like half of her confessionals, because I remember at least 2 being that. I would not be surprised if there's a third one that I forgot being just about those.
Honestly, though, great that she got that content. But again, like 3 0 confessional episodes, there's really no recovering from that. A miracle would have to be worked. I have seen like some previews for the next episode. It seems like Tiffany is gonna have like a pretty significant story arc going forward potentially. So that'll be good to see. But like, why would they give their winner 2 confessionals in the first five episodes? I can't imagine them doing that for season 50. You know. So Tiffany's gonna have to stay here at the bottom.
Maybe like a season 19 or something where it's like, just kind of a random season there. Maybe if there's like a adamant character that's really hateable. But like for season 50, no way. Yeah, no. I hate to say it. If you're a fan of Tiffany, enjoy the content while you can, but write her off for your chances of winning.
Yeah. Look, I think she could go far. I think that's entirely possible, but I don't see her winning.
I could even see her being a third placer at this point. I think that's still in the cards.
Yeah, it's possible. The only other thing I have to say about Tiffany is I appreciated her carrying the flame of Kenzie Petty and doing the buff bow in her hair. It's very stylish. A nice callback to her bestie from season 46. So I hope she continues to do it at every tribal council she goes to. Next up, I have Chrissy Hoffbeck. I mean, realistically, it just kind of comes down to confessional count for Chrissy. She is the only other player aside from Tiffany who is currently being skunked, according to like my criteria for 90-minute episodes. She has 2 goose eggs. The only other person aside from Tiffany to have more than 1. Her overall content just hasn't necessarily been positive for most of the season. And whenever it has been, it's been followed up by nothing. And this episode was actually a pretty good episode for her. She was able to convince Jonathan to work with her to vote out Camilla when, they were kind of throwing a funeral for Chrissy, like she was dead in the water. Definitely great content from Chrissy, kind of a little bit of a villainous side to her that we saw in her original season. That was fun to see on season 50. But aside from that, I don't know. I don't have a lot to say about Chrissy. She's just kind of 7 confessionals. She's there. She had a good episode. Not good enough to keep her from the bottom 2 after 2 goose eggs. And I guess the only other thing to really touch on for Chrissy is, again, the continued comments about women being under-edited this season. Definitely proving itself to be a very real issue as we continue to get through the season, as we see Chrissy get 2 confessionals this episode, despite kind of making like a big move, or we see like Stephanie continue to not really get much. I suppose there are men too who are a little bit under-edited, like Joe. Like Joe, really. Colby. For the time that he was in the game. But like, at the end of the day, the women are definitely getting shafted in the edit, and it is unfortunate, and we just lost one of the only women on the cast who isn't getting shafted in the edit, so Like, fuck. But what do you have anything to add on to that about Chrissy, Connor?
I mean, I think it's really interesting. I don't know how much you've seen about this. Have you seen the controversy that's come up from the "we're cut from the same cloth"?
Yeah,
like that comment she makes, dude. I think that's insane. How much people are trying to like read into what it is or isn't, and then like just the amount of backlash. She started deleting some of her social media accounts over it, and it's like, man, that simple wording really has such an impact. When I don't know exactly what she meant by it. She could have just genuinely meant we're old school players. You know?
Here's what I'll say. Like, if that's what she meant, I think she's being kind of dishonest. She's not an old school honor and integrity player. That's just never what she was on her original season. That's not even close to what she was on her original season. So if she's able to just sort of like convince people that that's what she is because she happens to be kind of old, then like good for her. But if that is truly what she meant, that is a bit of a deception. As for how people interpreted it, how she potentially could have meant it, you know, I think that there is some merit to it. I think, like, even if she didn't necessarily mean, oh, we should work together because we're white, she very well might have been talking along political lines. I mean, you kind of look at her and Jonathan, and they're two of the most, like, clearly people know what their political leanings are, as far as players who do lean towards the right of the political spectrum. Aside from Stephanie. Stephanie's really the other player on this cast where, like, yeah, obviously. But, like, so she meant on more of a personal level, we're cut on the same cloth. We're cut from the same cloth because we're both more conservative people. I don't think that's entirely unrealistic. And in today's political climate, I would personally take issue with that, but, you know, depending on how people are actually responding to it, I mean, she's deleting social media accounts. Are people sending her death threats? I feel like that might be going a little bit far. But yeah, no, I guess the long and short of it, of what I'm trying to say is I could see a world where she meant that in sort of a political way. And in that world, I'm just going to say it, like, I am heavily against that sort of political alignment, and to see two people decide to work together over their shared love of whatever the fuck you want to call the political right in America right now would be unfortunate. And I would not support it. But I don't really ever support sending death threats to a Survivor player, especially over just like a suspicion of what they might have meant by something they said. Definitely an overreaction. But I'm not going to completely dismiss the idea that there could have been something meant by it that would be unsavory in some sort of way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I fully agree. I think the intentions of it definitely being somewhat unknown make it a very interesting situation, and I mean, I suppose we'll see in upcoming episodes if it comes back into play, or, you know, what kind of situation was meant by it. At the end of the day, like you said, it could have just been, this are our political beliefs, this is the side of the sand we've been on for a lot of the votes. Mm-hmm. Or it could be a lot worse, and time will tell.
Yeah, if she really did mean we're both white people, then that would be a whole nother can of worms. But until we have any actual evidence that that's what she meant, I'm not going to assume that that's what she meant. So, it's controversial. You know, Penner made a tweet about it that got people fired up, and yeah, I feel like it was a little bit overblown, potentially. But again, like you said, we'll see maybe potentially what was meant by it down the road. That being said, we move on actually to Stephanie LaGrossa Kendrick. Talk about controversial political figures. I'm gonna be honest, I don't really feel like talking about Stephanie this episode. So I'll let you take the floor if you have anything to say.
I mean, I had one thing that I was going to point out that I thought was kind of crazy. The fact that she was the last person standing in that challenge. Props. Cool. She's in great physical condition. Good for her. You know, if I had to put money on who I thought was going to be last standing in that challenge, I would not have picked her. Maybe last from her group, just because, like, you know, she had Camilla, who I didn't expect to be that great. Jonathan, he's just such a big guy. And, like, I wasn't sure how Tiffany specifically would do with that challenge. But, like, I would have expected Chrissy to even beat her, and she doesn't. So, like, you know, props to Stephanie for being the last standing in the challenge. Outside of that, I mean, I don't know. Her content was kind of bleak. One of her 2 confessionals or 3 confessionals that she gets, what she get this episode, right? 2 or 3? Yeah, she gets 3. One of them is literally just, we have 17 people, largest merge ever. So it's like kind of a nothing burger episode anyways. From Stephanie, I feel like she's on the right side of the vote. Good for her. That's about all I got. Next,
and we talk about Joe Hunter, a player who I have very little to talk about with Joe, quite frankly. 2 confessionals. You know, he was kind of a target. Probably would have preferred that he went home over Genevieve. But at the end of the day, I just don't really feel like Joe is all that important. I feel like he's kind of just a number in the sort of Honor and Integrity Alliance, which is funny, given on his original season, he was the leader of the, like, the obvious frontrunner leader of the Honor and Integrity Alliance. And season 50, you know, where he's supposed to be playing a different game, evolving his game, learning from his mistakes, he's just doing the same thing, but instead, now he's a lackey. Like, I just don't have much confidence in Joe. I just don't think he's playing the game all that well. And, you know, there's not much to talk about with how little content he's gotten recently.
Yeah, I mean, again, he as you mentioned, 2 confessionals this episode. You want to guess what one of them was?
The
17 people on the beach. Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah. But I do also have a fun fact. And I'm going to bring this up during the Joe segment because we'll have a lot more to talk about with the other player that this also applies to. For the first time in New Era history, 2 players have reached 39 days of Survivor.
Whoa.
Joe and Dee finally hit the milestone of what an actual full-length season 1 through 40 Survivor season would have been. So the first 2 New Era players, if you ever get asked to hit 39 days, Joe and Dee. And that's about it for Joe, because
now they have to make it day 41 if they want to truly reach the heights of some of the old era Survivor seasons, or one of the old era Survivor seasons.
If Joe goes home tomorrow, sucks, I guess. But
no,
tough.
They have to make day 41. Actually, Tina is the only real winner of Survivor because she's the only winner to play a 41 big season.
You know what?
That's just
tell
facts.
that to the Aussies. Tell that to the Aussies, brother.
Bro, Aussie hasn't won.
No, the Aussies, Australians.
Oh, the Australians. I'm like, what are you talking about?
No, Aussie Survivor is a whole weird beast where they play like 1,000 days for no reason. So
real. Or 16. You know, it really depends on how they're feeling. Next up, I have Emily Flippin, financial analyst. A lot of negative content early on in the season. I was kind of willing to keep her near the top of my list despite that, just because, you know, Premiere was good, solid amount of content overall, but at this point, she's kind of just fallen off. 2 confessionals the last couple episodes. Not much of a story for her at this point, other than actually not much of a story for her at this point. I don't know. What's Emily's big story at this point in the game?
Well, there's 3 things that I can really point out for Emily. One, if I'm not mistaken, I think she's the female left in the game with the most confessionals, which kind of loop back 10 seconds, rewind. We just talking about how she doesn't really have much of a story, and yet she has the most. You tell me how that makes sense. You tell me how that's a good edit and how the odds should be good for Emily when we have to genuinely pick and pull at what actually is happening between her largest number of confessionals for females remaining in the game. The second thing that I can really point out, there's a recurring bit right now with Emily, is if you have a secret, you probably shouldn't tell her. I think this is the first episode where we saw her get told some kind of key information in the game and it not immediately get shared to everyone else on the beach, or at least 2 or 3 other people on the beach. So
she's growing. Emily growth arc 2.0.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see Emily stabilize her game and make a run, considering she was someone I was really not high on. She was one of my least favorites that was on this mega cast. And kind of also didn't really like the gameplay early on, but now things are smoothing out, which is unfortunate because so is the number of content. The total confessional count is just dipping in the last couple episodes. So I don't know. I'd like to see an Emily arc and some kind of development, and maybe we see her start to be the bearer of some secrets, but I can't say I'm holding my breath on that.
Expecting Emily to keep a secret is like expecting Suri to win an immunity challenge. It's just not gonna happen, unfortunately. Moving on to her fellow Season 45 player, I have D, and D has actually jumped up quite a bit as she continues to just get solid content this episode. Really bonding with Colby on his way out, which arguably doesn't matter because he is on his way out, but I do think it reflects positively on D. Her relationship with Rizzo feels like it's going to be very important, so that in of itself is a positive for D. And, she's got kind of a connection with Suri as well, so really that kind of ingratiates her pretty snugly into the polyamorous relationship, I guess, of Suri, Rizzo, and Ozzy. And I think she could slot pretty well into that alliance. And then obviously she has a connection to Emily, and Suri has a connection to Emily, as well as Christian and Rick. So maybe D kind of slots into that group in some way, shape, or form. It's really tough to say. I mean, there's a pretty big web of potential relationships this season. But I do think that that D is potentially in a pretty good spot at this point, and her content is starting to pick up, so she gets to move up a decent bit on this list for me, but not high enough to quite crack the top half.
Yeah, I kind of have her in a pretty similar spot on my list as well, and as you kind of mentioning, she's kind of in, she's got her hand in a bunch of different cookie jars, and things are really picking up in terms of her edit. And, I can't say I was feeling too good after watching her get 4 straight episodes with 1 confessional. But I suppose the fact that it wasn't a 0 means I guess I technically can't write her off completely. Truly, though, I just don't know where to place D, and I feel like she is kind of like a positive edited version of Joe right now, where it's like, I'm not out on her, but she kind of is a number for so many people that it's kind of, again, weirdly just not really got a direction that I trust yet. Again, we're looking at the preview for next episode. she might have a pretty clear direction coming up with, likely Jonathan. And I mean, I don't know what Coach is freaking out about, but we'll see what that is. But I do see her and Jonathan kind of waging a war over the next couple episodes, potentially.
Yeah, honestly, at the end of the day, I really do see it being kind of like Ozzy, Christian, Rizzo, Suri, Rick, Aubrey, Dee, Emily, Tiffany, like that whole group kind of getting together. And then the remaining people are kind of just the Honor and Integrity Alliance. I see that Honor and Integrity Alliance probably going down. We have 3 idols in the game, and all of them would theoretically be in the hands of that opposing alliance that I kind of see coming together with all the sort of mini groups. But like, you really look at the web of connections, and a picture starts to solidify of a major, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 person alliance at this point in the game. At the final 14. Yeah, they can take control for a little bit, see how that goes. And, yeah. We're still talking about D, right? I just,
yeah, and
completely kind of had a brain fire there. Okay, and yeah, D would be part of that. So good for her.
I will say something else that is of interest as well. I was going to kind of save this for a different spot, but I feel like it's pertinent to what you're discussing. When you look at it, you have Aubrey, Chrissy, Christian, Suri, Coach, Rick, Ozzy, and Stephanie. There is 9 people that are technically old era players. And yet, when you look at like the mentality of the players, I'd argue there's more new school mentality players, plus Suri, Ozzy, and Rizzo, who can kind of just go where they want. So, like, the Honor and Integrity core truly is hinging off of pretty much pulling in Rizzo, Suri, and Ozzy. And if they don't, I don't think they all necessarily go back to back to back to back to back. But I feel like a good chunk of them kind of get wiped out until you get left with either the best navigators of the situation or the nothing burgers of the situation.
I could very easily see Joe being like the next boot for episode 7. Just kind of feels like it's his time.
I mean, Joe, Jonathan, Coach, I feel like are 3 really, really likely candidates to be the boot. Depending on how the episode shakes out.
Chrissy, Stephanie too, like any of those 5, honestly, could potentially be the boot.
Yeah, I weirdly want to say I think somehow Stephanie is like the most likely to navigate it, and that's such an unfortunate world that like we could live through Stephanie being like the last Honor and Integrity person.
Mm-hmm.
But like I feel like she has the least enemies of that group.
Yeah,
and I guess that also is a testament to like weirdly she's playing a good social game, and I hate it. But good enough, I guess.
Maybe Christian doesn't like her very much at this point.
Dog, I hope someone does. I hope someone just, for some reason, just has not been edited showing not liking her.
Yeah, I mean, she went against him on the Angelina boot. Not that it worked, but But anywho, we can move on, talk about Coach, potential next boot, according to Connor, and I have to agree that that's definitely a pretty likely possibility. He's been very entertaining, he's had a lot of positive content, he's had a lot of negative content, he's been very confusing to me in the edit, which I think it's befitting that he's kind of right in the middle of this list. But, I don't know. Not much to say about Coach after this episode. He got 1 confessional, so I don't really feel like we need to linger on him too much, especially considering we are on a limited time frame. So do you want to just move on? Or do you have something to say about Coach real quick?
I have a quick thing that I want to say about Coach. If you exclude the premiere, he would be in the new era purpled territory of like he's barely over the amount.
Yeah.
And you also have to keep in mind he goes on the like fight for supplies challenge, which probably gave him like 4 or 5 confessionals right then and there. Just off the top of my head, I remember him getting at least 3 just from that alone. So, like, really, outside of that, Coach's edit has been super underwhelming, aside from the fact that it's Coach, what makes it ultimately, even with low numbers, high value, right? So he's been great entertainment. He's been awesome fun to watch on our screen. And I mean, I don't know. He's just a weird one to place. So I feel like, you know, we can kind of jump to the next player, which I believe you have is Aubrey. And honestly, I think Aubrey, we're finally getting to the good stuff. I feel like this is the Aubrey we've been looking for if you were cheering for Aubrey this season.
You know, I have a different perspective on Aubrey after this episode. I actually don't, like, I didn't really move Aubrey up on my list. And at first, my first instinct was that I have to move Aubrey up. But then I thought about it, and I'm like, man, for a situation where she's in a group with Genevieve and does take her out of the game, we really don't, like, she really doesn't take much credit for it or get too much content about it. Like, she still gets fewer confessionals than Christian. She gets fewer than Rick. Hell, she gets the same amount as Genevieve. And, like, how much of that content is specifically about, like, yeah, Genevieve's going down, you know? It's just, like, not much, really. It's, like, actually kind of underwhelming, I feel like, the resolution to her and Genevieve's arc. And then when you combine that with the fact that it's really the only arc that Aubrey has, that's not a good sign. I mean, maybe she becomes like Tiffany, has her revenge arc, where she wants to take out Jonathan. Maybe Aubrey joins in on that. But it's like, man, it feels like Aubrey's story in the season is kind of over, and it went out with kind of a whimper. It was anticlimactic. She didn't play Genevieve, and she didn't even really get to boast about it too much in the edit. It just kind of happened. And now Genevieve's gone. And what does that leave Aubrey with? In my opinion, not much. So, I mean, she still manages to make the top half of this list. And winning out over Genevieve when that was such a major part of her story so far in the season is still going to be a bit of a bump. But the fact that it was so underwhelming and anticlimactic, in my opinion, and the fact that, you know, she hasn't been given much else to work off of now that Genevieve is gone, for it to happen so early in the season, I don't know how well it actually bodes for Aubrey, but clearly you have a different perspective, so I'm curious to hear what you think.
See, I look at it as the opposite. Now that she's had this kind of underwhelming situation where, you know, she's had this seemingly one-sided beef, and all of a sudden it actually comes to an end, and we really hear more about it from Genevieve's perspective this episode. I look at it as an opportunity for her to actually gain some growth in terms of what we can expect from her. She can maybe start making some more strategic and social developments that will actually gain her more screen time, will gain her more traction in terms of rankings. And I guess it's like an open promise that, you know, like, she's not necessarily going to deliver on. I mean, I have her in the same spot on my rankings that you do. So it's not like I'm, you know, ranking her higher because of this expectation or this idea. But in theory, there is more opportunity for her to get some kind of boom in terms of odds of winning, in terms of content, in terms of like an actual story for the season. Now that she has kind of toppled over, maybe stumbled, I guess, through the first obstacle, which was a player who had the numbers and was ultimately just a really, really strong start from Genevieve. You know, it took basically 2 tribe swaps, but Aubrey, at the end of the day, kind of did do what she had to do to get to this point without really having much of a target. And outside of, like, I guess, Genevieve's group, which is now going to be, I guess, the honor and integrity folks, but they're going to have bigger people to worry about, I would more than likely assume, or I guess flashier targets are going to, pop into the forefront. So ultimately, I think her positioning is also pretty solidly intact, like in the middle, and I don't see her going home soon.
Yeah, I'd largely agree. I don't necessarily see her going home soon, but I don't know. Aubrey's edit has just been really weird. It's been really weird to see, like, how they've been portraying her. Like, do they want us to cheer for her? It kind of doesn't seem like they do. So I'm like, man, I don't know. But that being said, we can move on and talk about Rick Devens. Solid episode for Rick Devens. I would say he gets a good amount of content, which is nice, considering we kind of didn't have too much of Rick for a few episodes there. But then there's also the fact that he was kind of the main voice saying we should just get rid of Joe and make the easy move, and then that didn't happen, to where I think you can point to that as somewhat of a negative. But overall, from between his very strong premiere and his solid content this episode, he ranks just above Aubrey, mostly being weighed down by the fact that A, he doesn't really get what he wants this episode, or what he expresses in his confessionals this episode, and B, we did spend 3 episodes, well, really just 1 episode, I guess, of literally no Rick content, and then, 2-3 confessional episodes is actually really nothing to be upset about. So overall, definitely prospects are good for Rick, but there are some negatives to point to for sure, I feel like.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me with Rick is just, again, kind of a few down episodes that I really don't know what you're going to get from him, and really doesn't point in much of like a direction for a little bit. And he could have had content, I feel like, in a lot of those like most recent episodes, especially like the episode where he gets the goose egg. It's just such a weird one for me, because like the opportunity for him to just have a confessional seemed there. And then the next episode, we get, 8 from Rizzo. We get Charlie gets a couple. Camilla gets quite a bit. And he really just kind of gets blindsided without giving much of an opinion or really saying anything useful. So it was I would argue, a much needed bounce back for Rick. And ultimately, I even have him a little bit higher than you do this week. So it truly just was like a bit of a dry spot for Rick that we really needed to push past before he really started dropping. And I think this is kind of we had a small turbulence, but, Rick's back. Gave us a really fun, Rick confessional, his classic news report. And, I'm just happy to have more Rick time on my screen.
For real. Now for the queen of polyamory herself, Suri Fields. I'll let you get started on Suri.
Just the fact that came out of her mouth is an amazing start. I cannot believe that this is the situation we're living in, where it's her, Ozzy, and Rizzo, of all people. It's amazing. Man, I would love to know how this is the world we ended up in, out of if there's other universes out there where this doesn't happen, why? Because this is just the right one. This is the one I didn't know I wanted this, and now I want more of it. It's just amazing. And then, of course, let's get into the vote. She wants Colby. The other 2 people there are Colby's going to get medevaced anyways. Let's go after Coach. So Sri does what she does best. She walks right in, talks to them both one-on-one, says, this is what I wanted. And then we cut to the other 2 both saying, well, I kind of want Coach here. And guess what? Coach is still there. Colby's gone. Not much better could have happened in this episode, aside from, I guess, just maybe a couple more confessionals, because, I don't know, I guess 4 could be just not enough if we're really being nitpicky, given, A, she's had a goose egg, and kind of a lackluster swap, I guess. But, like, I mean, I can't write off Suri, and if anyone is, I would love to know why.
The only reason I could write off Suri is that I just struggle to see a world where she actually does win from a logistical standpoint. Who's letting Suri make it to the final 3? And is Suri winning an immunity challenge or a fire-making challenge? Probably not. So it is tough to see what actually would have to happen for Suri to win the season from a logistical standpoint. But from an edit standpoint, I do think that Suri has had very solid content all around, which allowed her to crack my top 5. Now for number 4, I have Jonathan Young. Great episode for Jonathan. Obviously, I think he proves that he is out here to play a strategic game. Very easy vote would have been to just side with his, original tribe and vote out Chrissy. It would have been very easy. I mean, I think Chrissy was on his original tribe, actually, so. But, the people he was actually kind of working with, Camilla did kind of blindside him, which is what leads him to make the decision that he does this time around. Again, it was just very much portrayed as the easy, simple thing for Jonathan to do would have been to just vote out Chrissy, but instead he makes a move and he blindsides Camilla, gets his revenge for the Charlie blindside, and actually proves himself to be a strategic player with agency, which I think is exactly what his edit was needing, given all the talks in his early confessionals about how that's what he's going to prove. He's going to be a more strategic player this time around. I think, all in all, this was just a really good episode for Jonathan. It set up a very good story for him moving forward to really play this actual strategic game without people necessarily expecting that he would. And the only thing for him is that, he's probably going to have a target on his back now. And his Honor and Integrity Alliance probably isn't going to hold for too crazy long. So realistically, he could be a boot within the next few episodes. But from an edit perspective, this was a phenomenal episode for Jonathan. I'll let you take the floor and talk about Jonathan now, though, Connor.
Yeah, I guess some of the downsides you can look at is just, obvious. He is always a threat to win the game from the perspective of people who are worried about, oh my god, he's big and strong with muscles, right? So people, for some reason, just have never let that go in 49 seasons of Survivor, and it has a target on his back that will just always be there. It's something he can't get rid of. It's something he'll be judged for every time he ever plays Survivor in the history of ever. Again, however, that being said, he proves that, hey, maybe his lessons with Boston Robert paying off. Maybe the times he spent in the Mariano household for months and months and months on end, just learning, talking, and observing the game of Survivor from one of the true greats. He might have picked up a thing or two, and we just watched it happen on live HD television in glorious fashion, because again, he took out a really good strategic player. And he got his get back. Charlie was kind of his boy. He was kind of one of his number ones that wasn't the Honor Integrity folks. So, in all honesty, I also, again, maybe underreacted, I thought, by putting him at 6 on my list. And very much, I can hear the argument for him to be even higher than 4. He had an amazing episode, and the confessional count jumps up. That's the real downside, is I guess he's doubling his numbers from the first 5 episodes. If you really want to nitpick at something, that's the thing I think you really look at. But again, he was kind of on a tribe that just didn't go to tribal, and like weirdly, I predicted that, even though it was not necessarily the logical conclusion to jump to. But hey, he immediately bounces back as soon as we get into the merge. Tons of content, great decision. As you mentioned, has agency, has potential numbers, could kind of push his weight wherever he needs to. And really, I think the true test is, can he survive Dee and Tiffany?
We'll see. I'm actually gonna go as far as to say probably not, but if he does, his winning prospects look pretty good. Now at number 3, I have the man, the myth, the legend, RIZ, God, Riz God Baby, and for Rizzo to be so high on his back-to-back, like, I don't know, like, I had Rizzo pretty high up on my rankings throughout most of season 49, so for Rizzo to be so high up at this point on season 50 is, like, kind of crazy. I don't think there's too many other players who are, like, legitimate edge of contenders 2 seasons in a row. I don't know that there's been a player, Russell Hantz? No. I don't think he was ever a contender on Heroes vs. Villains in any sort of serious way. Malcolm, maybe? As like an underdog on his return. Zeke, probably not. Really? Kind of an early boot. I don't know how much of like a Michaela, definitely not. I could just Sharin, no. Sharin, absolutely not. Joe Anglim, again, no, probably not. So Rizzo might genuinely, and again, I'd have to look into this, but he might genuinely be, from an edgic perspective, the best back-to-back player in Survivor history. Again, just from like being a contender within the edit of the show. I just think that's really cool for the Riz God. That's something he can always hang his hat on. And he's got a crazy alliance now with Ozzy and Suri that I'm very excited to see how that plays out. But, yeah, I mean, he spent the episode on Exile. I don't really remember much of his content once he was sent to Exile. So,
I mean, I can recap that and also just jump in on the first point you kind of pointed out. Technically, people had a chance to witness it first. I think the best example of like an edgic back-to-back contender would probably be Amanda Kimmel. But again, people got to watch her play, so the returning players like knew who she was, and the fans knew who she was for her second season of the back-to-back. So it's this weird like kind of counts. And then content once he got to Exile, I mean, it was kind of just him being like, oh my god, I get to be, with Ozzy, he's amazing, I'm going to tell him about my advantage, he locked this in, he trusts me, I trust him. And then scene that isn't shown is basically Ozzy being like his little hero and building a log cabin around him because he was just not feeling too hot. So yeah, that was amazing. The Liz God actually made fun of it on TikTok, which I also saw, which was amazing. So yeah, apparently he kind of was just not feeling so hot, and Ozzy just built him a little log cabin, and he kind of just slept for most of it, which, honestly, that's my goat right there.
Yeah, that's kind of the extent to what I remember for him, so...
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of most of what happens this episode, and yet we're all, ooh, Rizzo, great episode, because again, what happens? He builds a deeper connection with key players, insulates himself. He has the option to, steer away from the honor integrity group, or say, you know what? If me, Suri, Ozzy, we go with them, we have the numbers. So he gets a chance to play the middle road. He has a great alliance that has 3 of the 4 advantages that are in the game currently. So, like, a lot of the cards are dealt in his favor right now. And again, from an edgic standpoint, arguably the best, or at absolute worst, second best from a back-to-back seasons perspective. And it is exactly what you'd want to see from the RIZ-GOD. Riz God Baby.
Hell yeah. Next up, I have in my number 2 spot, Christian Hibiki. Now, for Christian, I don't know. Again, overexposure is really the name of Christian's edit, and I don't think he got like a ton of like important content this episode, aside from just the decision of whether or not to vote out Joe or Genevieve. And clearly he chooses Genevieve, which I guess is portrayed as the best decision because the whole thing is contingent on Genevieve potentially playing something and being safe, which didn't happen. So good for Christian. As for his overexposure, I keep him here at number 2 because, quite frankly, if I were editing season 50, just because it's season 50, just because why the fuck not, I would over-edit the hell out of the winner. I would give the winner one of the biggest edits of any winner in Survivor history, just because it's season 50, it's a celebration of Survivor, it's this big monumental thing, and just, they don't do that a lot necessarily, so like, it's not going to necessarily make them too obvious of a winner. Throw that fucking insane edit onto him and give him 40 confessionals in the first 6 episodes. Why not? Do I think that's necessarily what he's doing or what they're doing? Maybe not. That's why I have him at number 2, because overexposure generally isn't a great thing, but I'm not weighing it as heavily against him this season as I would for most other seasons. Just again because it's season 50, and that's kind of what it boils down to. What do you have to say about Christian Connor?
I mean, the fact that this is one of the episodes that we have gotten like the smallest total number of confessionals from him, if not the smallest, I guess it's kind of the course correct from overexposure. And I will also add on to that. 2 of those confessionals happened during the technically not merged stage, but drop your buff stage. Like, his name is grayed out when they're talking about it, like 2 of his confessionals. And again, one of them was just, oh, I'm happy to see Rick again. Oh my God, here's all the other 49 legends. And then he name drops a couple people. Another one is just like, oh my God, I've been working so hard to build distrust with Ozzy. Just told me he had an idol. Hooray. And it's like, it's good content. But again, it's so much. And then, yeah, I suppose, vote goes exactly how he plans. Rick is like, I don't know, we should just target Joe. And he's like, no, we're good. You're fine. I got you. And it goes exactly, as it's needed. So, with Rick, the name of the game is when is too much is too much, right? When is enough enough? When is the number so high that we have to, write him off? And to your point, I don't mind on a returning players only season or even like a half returning season. If there's just a player that's that entertaining, that dominant, that important, fuck it. Just edit them in every chance you get. Throw them on our screens. Make sure we see them so much that we go, yes, I want this person to win. Because, who right now is sitting at home going, oh man, Joe's 14 confessionals. I'm cheering for him to win because he is so far of an underdog that I don't even know if he's a dog in the fight anymore, right? No, you're going to look at Christian's number and go, oh my God, I've seen this guy so much. It's awesome. It's amazing.
All right.
I want him to win. And if you don't think that, you just must not like Christian. If that is your opinion. It's blasphemous one, but that's fine.
Blasphemous. True.
I also say this because this is my mother's opinion. So, if you're watching this, Mom, guess what? Your opinion's blasphemous.
Blasphemy. Yeah, some people just don't like having a certain player pushed on them, I guess. Um, it's like, I don't know, fair enough, but I love Christian. You can never make me hate Christian. So, yeah. I don't know. I was just looking into this as we were talking about different people and stuff. I don't know necessarily. Some of the older seasons are tough to say as far as what people were thinking when it came to the edit. It seems as though Amanda was a decent contender throughout Survivor China, but that she wasn't really necessarily that much of a contender throughout Micronesia from the edit's perspective. So it was kind of like Parvati or Eliza until Eliza got voted out, and then it was just Parvati with Sari being like the potential like surprise winning candidate, and then even then Alexis was put above Amanda for a lot of the season. So I don't know.
Shout out Alexis, but that's crazy.
So Amanda wasn't really necessarily seen as too much of an edge contender based on the limited information that is available about seasons that early on. So realistically, Rizzo might take the cake. In which case, awesome. Love that for him. It's something that you'll find interesting too. As far as Russell Hantz, he was definitely a contender on Samoa. Not the top contender for most of the season. Top contender for most of the season, almost the entire season, was Mick.
That makes sense. I understand why.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of crazy in hindsight when you can like look back at the broad spectrum of things, just because like I would have never actually seen him win the season in my head, but like I suppose it does actually make a lot of sense because, you know, if it was just, oh, here's why Russell shouldn't win, I guess it should just be whoever's next up. But when they under-edit the ever-loving crap out of the person who actually is next up, it kind of makes it look like Mick is said person.
Yeah. Makes sense. Anywho, we should probably just talk about our number one spot. I think we both have Aussie Lust. Decent content, bonding with Rizzo on Exile here. I even think like his decision to bring Rizzo made some sense. And again, he was number one on my last rankings. This episode just didn't give me any reason to move him down. So he stays here at number one. 42 confessionals most of the season now. He's overthrown Christian, which is kind of crazy. So, you know, maybe Ozzy's overexposed. He doesn't feel as overexposed as Christian because I feel like his content is a little more spread out, but...
Well, it's not just because it feels that way. It's because in the first episode, every single possible thing that he could have gone on or could have had happen did happen. He got 19 in that premiere.
Yeah, I guess it's less spread out in a way, actually.
Yeah, I say, like, what would that be, that number? The 23 in the 5 episodes that have followed the premiere? Whereas, like, you can take any 4 episodes and Christian has that many.
Mm-hmm.
Take Christian's first 2 episodes and it's like 4 less than Ozzy's first 2. So, again, if we're looking at the ballpark of overexposure, they're now both in that conversation. But we didn't come to this conclusion last episode or the episode before or the episode before that with Ozzy because, again, how his content has been shown to us has been just significantly different. The other thing that I think was really important, when you're looking at Ozzy's content, Christian, super analytical, super big driver of multiple votes. And it's part of why it's so memorable what he's been given. Whereas like Ozzy, aside from his little kerfuffles with Christian, hasn't really had any negative content that really comes to mind. And likewise for Christian, it's kind of that same boat of like they've just kind of had their, issues with each other temporarily. But Ozzy's also just had so much good that's happened consistently. Like, Sari talking to Rizzo about it and bringing him in. Whereas like during the swap stage, Christian, he was kind of in a weird spot with a lot of his allies or people that he could potentially work with and kind of started dwindling them out. So like, weirdly, I feel like Ozzy's almost even just had better content at this point, with or without the larger number.
Yeah, it's potentially true. I mean, I do have him in my number one spot, so I obviously can't entirely disagree with that. But ultimately, he was on exile for the most important part of this episode, so there still isn't like a ton to talk about with Ozzy. So really, with that being said, I mean, next episode, I'm excited to see what happens. I think it's going to be a bit of a turning point for the season where we really get a good idea of what the rest of the season is probably going to look like. So I'm definitely very interested. I'm sure everyone's excited for a hopefully normal-ish episode. Maybe Mr. Beast shows up and I'll be eating my words, but we'll see. That being said, anything to add on before we wrap things up, Connor?
Not too much, other than just you mentioned this previously to me, the idea that there'd be some kind of other twists this next upcoming episode. I really hope there isn't. I know that's like there's just been like a bunch of episodes in a row with like some crazy stuff happening, and like I just want one normal episode before everything goes to shit again. So I don't know if that's like a likewise opinion with you, but I would just like, one episode of normal, ideally nothing crazy.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like that. That'd be nice. After a double elimination followed immediately by a triple elimination, I feel like, we can take a break from craziness, but I do think there's in the rumor mill I've heard that Final 13, so like episode 8, there's going to be another double elimination twist, and I mean, it does have to happen eventually. We still have 14 players left with what should be 7 episodes
and 13 days. So
there's got to be something. There's got to be something coming up. Some sort of double elimination sometime soon. Probably even another one later on in the season.
See, what I would like is let's just, at 14, we just do a regular elimination. Then next episode, why don't we send one more person back to exile? We'll do double elimination, whether that be 2 tribals, whether that be back-to-back tribals, whatever it may be. Just give us, 14th placer is just by themselves, normal-ish episode without too much crazy, shenanigans.
Or give us Mr. Beast and he bribes 2 people into quitting the game.
See, I really hope that it was that idea that I theorized where it's just like, all right, who wants to give up immunity for like 10 grand? Because that's at least like basically a very enhanced version of the, all right, who wants to give up immunity for like food? Because you've been hungry for like 20 days. It's a wild, crazy version of that like at least, okay, this isn't that insane of a game mechanic. Maybe it's just a chance at 10K, or maybe it's 10K split among all the players that choose to sit out or something like, something small like that could be an acceptable way to include Mr. Beast that I wouldn't just lose my mind and it completely alter the game.
Would you sit out of an immunity challenge for 10K?
It would only depend on the situation. It would entirely, but I'm going to say likely no.
I'd have to think on that. Anywho, that being said, I think that's kind of everything that there's to talk about with this episode. So we'll see you guys for the next episode. The pod has spoken.